Every passing day, Indian media makes a new record of stooping lower than expected. Every issue that it brings forth, the Indian media turns that issue of vital public importance into a spectator sport. Akhlaq Khan, Pehlu Khan mob lynching, Palghar lynching, Kamlesh Tiwari lynching case, Gauri Lankesh and Kalburgi assassination, Sushant Singh's case. In all such cases, both the left and the right came out with the worst of themselves. They turned these vitally important cases into an exchange of verbal diarrhea. Had words been bullets, they would have definitely killed millions so far. I liked Ravish Kumar a lot a decade ago. I was fan of his journalistic style. Another important reason of my being his fan was that my mother is a Congress voter. And I always saw her singing bards of Indira Gandhi. She still has her portrait hanging on the wall. I just take them out when I make these videos. And back then, Arnab Goswami was doing what Ravish is doing right now. And I kind of hated him for being too critical of Manmohan Singh and the Congress regime. But I liked Ravish Kumar, as I considered him sane and balanced. Even his criticism of the Congress government seemed like a pat on the back. But as I went to college in 2011 and then started reading things, I grew a bit resentful of the government. But I still supported the Congress party. And again, Ravish was my idol. But it was after 2015 when I started noticing a sting in his journalism and a softer tone in Arnab Goswami's for the newly elected government, especially when Akhlaq was lynched. Ravish and other Muslim and communist scholars behaved like as if it was the first of such crime that was committed after such a long and peaceful reign of Mahatma Gandhi. But they didn't register such similar protest when 8 people were killed since 2010 till 2014 in similar cow vigilante violence. So I guess that protest and award wapsi wasn't against the cow vigilantism, but against BJP. By the way, so far 28 people have been killed in last 10 years by cow vigilante. In a country of 1.3 billion people, just 28 people were killed by those self-styled cow vigilantes. Though I completely agree that they had full backing of the BJP leadership, and this support needed to be brought to the surface. But here the left media played its another trick, as they gave you the percentage of such incidents being committed during Modi rule, and that turns out to be a whooping 86%. It sounds huge in terms of percentage, right? But in terms of numbers, it is just 23 people. And meanwhile, the right-wing media carefully steered away the debate, just like they do these days as well, from cow vigilantism to the left ecosystem being anti-Modi, as if being anti-Modi was some sort of a crime. Media also saw a big change in the journalistic style of the two powerful media magnates. And it literally seemed as if they switched tones. Arnab grew pro-BJP, who was earlier anti-establishment during the Congress rule, and Ravish turned anti-BJP, who was previously pro-establishment. Well, surely Ravish was not a chest-thumping journalist as Arnab is these days. But yes, he was pro-Congress, as he considered Hindutva a threat to the secularism. And here I share his opinion as well. But in what way Hindutva is anti-secularism, whereas Islam is pro-secularism that he dearly stands by? This sudden change in their tone made me sit and think, and I then started reading about Indian media and its biasness. And I found out that after Indira Gandhi came to power, she made sure that only her favored journalists gets an access to news. And then some newspaper bore the brunt of being anti-Indira, and some got paid to be pro-Indira, as it is happening nowadays. Media started picking sides, and in 1970s, Indian journalists and academicians got to romance the Soviets, as the Soviets were looking for stooges in India, whom they could control and play. Now fast forward to 2000s. Media always chose to ignore the misgovernance of Lalu Yadav in Bihar and Mulayam Singh Yadav in UP. Media chose to ignore these incidents quite carefully, as media houses by 2000s figured out a target in the BJP and the RSS. And here BJP and the RSS were trying their best to live up to the brutal expectations of their left media comrades by showcasing bigotry and stupidity. But far away from Delhi, in Gujarat, there was a guy who was closely watching all these things happening. He watched carefully, being called the Butcher of Gujarat for choreographing the Godhra riots and the events that followed. Probably after the independence, Godhra riots were first of its kind that were being telecasted on live media. The whole country saw those riots. The whole country saw the train being burnt by Muslim fanatics. The whole country saw the Muslims being burnt and killed by Hindu fanatics. We saw everything. But interesting things happened in media houses when the media equivocally called Narendra Modi the Butcher of Gujarat for using riot to come back to power in 2004 elections. By the way, the riots were used by BJP to win elections. But that was not the first time that happened. Riots and elections had a mutually coexisting inglorious history in independent India. But the same media that was so vocal in calling Modi the butcher earlier failed to show same enthusiasm when Rajiv Gandhi tried his best to earn the same distinction for killing 3,000 Sikhs in Delhi and 100 innocent Muslims in Bhagalpur. Actually, media, be it international or domestic, has always followed one cute policy of judging people. If you kill a person in the name of religion and prior to killing them sings the bards of communal harmony and brotherhood and secularism, then you get yourself a Teflon coating, and that way you can ward off the criticism. Media will always be very cautious in calling you names. But if you have people killed in the name of religion and call yourself a proud Hindu or Sikh, then you would not be afforded the same caution in calling names, and media would give you as many names as they can possibly hit upon. That has been the beauty of the media houses globally, and smart people like Rajiv Gandhi identified this theory and used it pretty well, whereas Narendra Modi could not understand this political theorem earlier. Now when Modi saw this power of media, he hit upon an idea of creating his own web of journalists, just like the Congress party had around itself, that were awarded acronym of Lutyens Media or Khan Market Gang by Narendra Modi. But as you know, BJP is not that clean in committing a crime. It lacks that finishing as the Congress has. Congress tamed media but with a panache and style that made those journalists look fair and critical of the government, but they were actually criticizing the government for a much less heinous crime. They were actually acting like a safety valve that Indian National Congress was for the British, that the Hindu Mahasabha became for the British in Quit India movement. This way, the Congress party managed journalists from the likes of Hindustan Times, Times of India, NDTV, Barkha Dutt, Rajendra Sardesai, Veer Sanghvi, Rajiv Shukla. But I must add here that Ravish Kumar did not have that privilege of being among the elite journalists that batted for Congress. But having worked under the ones that did, and having had an inclination towards communism, he got played by the emotions and happened to bat for the Congress by remaining unbiased and honest in his own self. But BJP didn't turn out to be as cool a criminal as Congress was. When BJP committed the crime of buying out media houses to its side, it itself became a news. Media houses that BJP bought soon became the headquarters of the BJP IT cell, and the senior journalists like Sudhir Chaudhary, BND and Arnab became the critically acclaimed BJP IT cell operators. And the Lakshmipati Balaji of Indian journalism, the Ravish Kumar, became the torchbearer of honest journalism in India. Ravish Kumar is towing the lines that Arnab Goswami towed in the past the subtle way. But the present situation of media is completely destroyed and in ruins. All I can see in news channel is a fight of the pro-BJP and anti-BJP. It just depends which channel you watch. But yes, one thing I can tell you surely that none of them is telling you the real picture. ना एसएससी स्टूडेंट्स के लिए बोलने वाला रविश कुमार, ना सुशांत के लिए जस्टिस खेलने वाला अर्नब।